YouTube, what is going on? It is your boy APFC back again for another video. Today, I am doing my video about Granit Xhaka, the man that has had a huge resurgence at Arsenal Football Club. I mean, it's a bit of a comeback story with Granit Xhaka, considering this is a guy that every single fan was crucifying. I'm not saying this is correct, but there was people on his Instagram abusing him and his family, which is completely wrong. But this is the sort of level of hate Granit Xhaka was getting from Arsenal fans to now being one of the key players in our team. And we've seen Wenger, Arteta, and Emery all consistently pick Xhaka. And every Arsenal fan would say, well, why? Why do all these three managers, why does everyone keep picking Xhaka? Hey, maybe we all got it wrong. Maybe he has a lot more ability than I thought he did, and that game against Chelsea pretty much showed everything. For him to be able to slot into centre back so comfortably and play the game that he did and look so natural in a position that is relatively unnatural for him was a testimony with the ability that he has. And trust me, I can't believe I'm saying this right now because this is a man I wanted sold. I wanted Granit Xhaka sold. As soon as that Palace game was finished, where he threw the captain's armband and threw his shirt on the floor as he got substituted, I wanted him out. And I'm sure I wasn't the only one that wanted that. I thought it was incredibly disrespectful to the badge, incredibly disrespectful to the shirt. There's so many other captains that have had the honour of wearing that, a captain's armband and the Arsenal badge. And so many players and fans alike that would love that honour. For him to disrespect it like that was, well, for me, there was no way back from that. And, initially when he came back into the lineup, I was pissed off that Emery had given him another chance. I thought he should have just been sold then and no one hears about him again. However, the man has made a remarkable resurgence, and today I am discussing that. So, to give you an idea, it was October the 28th, 2019. Granit Xhaka got substituted around the 60th minute of the game. He had an incredibly poor game against Crystal Palace at home, where it ended up being a 2-2 draw. He got substituted, sort of threw his captain's armband on the floor. Then he sort of goaded the fans, did these ones as they were booing him and telling him to hurry up and get off the field. And ultimately, he went off and then he threw his shirt on the floor and walked down the tunnel. And every single fan thought that that was probably it for Granit Xhaka, and rightly so with the way that he behaved. He then played again against Frankfurt in Emery's last game, in fact, ironically, on November the 29th. Since then, he has played 9 of the past 10 Premier League games, with the only game missing was due to, I think it was concussion. So, in itself, first of all, that is a massive comeback for a player that disrespected the shirt that badly to be put into the side and just get on with it is, in some respects, a testament to his character. And let's be real, since that Frankfurt game, Granit Xhaka has put in 8 to 9 out of 10 performances weekly. Maybe the Palace game at parts in the second half, he went back to the old Xhaka, but it shows to me that because he's able to go to new levels after everything that's happened, and because, as I just mentioned in the Palace game, he sort of switched off for a half and was performing back to the old Granit Xhaka we knew before, sort of shows that his biggest issue is a mentality thing and a focus thing. And I noticed in that Chelsea game, he could have very easily lost his cool, and not necessarily in this respect of spit the dummy, but playing out of position, he could have completely lost his bearings in the game and ultimately cost us more goals. But he got on with it. Luiz got sent off. Interestingly enough, really interestingly enough, I thought he was going to bring on Rob Holding. I think that was initially the plan, but the way that Granit Xhaka looked so comfortable in centre back probably was one of the reasons why Arteta held off on the sub. And he thought maybe he could bring on someone like Guendouzi instead to offer more energy, which Not saying Guendouzi was the reason that we got back in that game, but the substitute was. It was the correct sub. He didn't take he didn't take one of the wingers off. He left Xhaka on. And for me, it was just incredible how comfortable he looked in a position that he hasn't been used to being played. I know he's played left back. I think it was earlier this season he had to play left back, and he did quite well there. But to give you some of the ideas of the stats, so when he played at centre back against Chelsea, he made 2 tackles, 1 interception, 4 clearances, and won every single aerial duel. When I used to watch Granit Xhaka of old, Granit Xhaka in the air was never strong. He lacked, although he has the physical frame, he lacks that physicality. He lacks that presence. I don't think that anymore. I think he is a presence now in the midfield, and as I've mentioned in previous videos, he is particularly a presence when it's him and Lucas Torreira. Granit Xhaka has never performed consistently next to Guendouzi. He's never performed consistently next to any other midfielder. I've seen the best of Xhaka when Lucas Torreira is there. They complement each other in some respects that Lucas Torreira is that more defensive-minded midfielder, whereas Xhaka, although he is putting a lot more defensive work in, which I will go into in a moment, he has a bit more ability to spray the passes and build up the play. He is essentially the anchor of our side, and everyone knew that. All Arsenal fans knew that Granit Xhaka was that sort of anchor role, and in some respects, perhaps a deep lying playmaker. But he's offering more than just an anchor role. Before, no one, I don't think anyone's really questioned Granit Xhaka's passing range. That's one thing that whatever you thought of him before, everyone always knew that he had a passing range, and he was relatively consistent with it. Yeah, he had some games where his range was off, but generally speaking, that's probably one of his biggest strengths. But what he's added to this now, and this has made us as a whole unit stronger, is that because of his increased focus, and how he doesn't switch off in games as much anymore, he's able to have more awareness, and he's got a lot more defensive responsibility, and he's taking up that sort of defensive responsibility with open arms, and he's passed those sort of tests and flying colours, because in all these games, Granit Xhaka is now winning tackles. Granit Xhaka is not getting caught in possession. Anyway, I'll go into it more. So these are some of the things that I've noted down with Granit Xhaka. So as I said, this Granit Xhaka's improvement, I've taken a couple of notes, is that he gives the ball away less. And who can argue with that? Because that was one of his biggest weaknesses at the beginning of the season and throughout his Arsenal career, is that not that he couldn't play a pass, but it's like he would switch off when playing the pass, and he just wouldn't really have that awareness of the threat of not only losing the ball, but the threat of playing the right pass. He often wasn't playing the right pass. He'd go for the miracle ball. I don't notice that with him anymore. Yes, he still plays those long balls, and that's something I still want Granit Xhaka to do, and a lot of Arsenal fans want him to do. But he now has that knowledge of being able to know of when to play that pass, and that separates the good midfielders from the great midfielders. And hey, I'm not saying that Granit Xhaka is a great midfielder. I think he's good. I think he still has a bit more to prove in regards to, is he a great midfielder? Is he a great player? I think that the word great is too loosely thrown around these days. But he is making a lot better decisions, and perhaps having David Luiz there and playing a lot more of that playmaker role has given Xhaka less pressure to be able to play those long balls. I'm not sure, but I have noticed that since Arteta's come in particular, Granit Xhaka seems to have much better decision making. And I mean, I'm sure there was a lot of Arsenal fans that questioned when Arteta was really hoping and trying to convince Granit Xhaka to stay. But who's questioning it now? Because I was, and now I'm not. I mean, how can you? He's probably right now alongside Torreira, by far our best two midfielders. I still think centre mid is an area of weakness, and I'm not 100% convinced that Granit Xhaka is good enough still. But what he's shown in the last 9 games, 9 to 10 games or so, is based on those performances, he's well and truly good enough to be able to play at this level consistently. Granit Xhaka now offers more urgency than he did previously. We would all know what would happen under the Emery era in particular, that Granit Xhaka would often get the ball played to him. He'd have his back to midfielders pressing him from the opposition. And let's be real, the guy had very little urgency, and not just very little urgency, he had very little pace. So, you may not be the most urgent player in the world, but if you've got a lot of agility and a lot of pace, you can get away with it. Granit Xhaka is not blessed with those characteristics. I don't think he's necessarily slow, but he's definitely on the slower side in respects to comparing him to other midfielders. He's not the most agile one either, but because he has more urgency, it has allowed him to basically not give the ball away as much. And I think because he's added more urgency into his game, his confidence has grown. And what I've noticed now is that when he's getting pressed, he's not panicking as much. And I think that is because he's not as urgent, he moves the ball quickly. And now I seem to notice is that Granit Xhaka seems to know who he's going to pass the ball to before he gets the ball. And that's something that I've criticized Xhaka for in the past, is that he's never really seemed to know who he's going to play it to before he gets the ball. A lot of the top midfielders in the world, they are 2 to 3 steps ahead of the actual play. Never thought that of Xhaka, finally starting to see it now. And it's making our whole midfield better because we're not as open in the midfield. We don't lose possession as much. In turn means we control the game more. And even if we do lose possession, Granit Xhaka is now offering more defensive qualities. This was a massive, massive weakness in his game. And I don't think it's because he couldn't do it. I think it was down to laziness in some respects, because I've seen Granit Xhaka play for Switzerland. I watched Granit Xhaka play before he signed for us for Switzerland in the World Cup. I even watched him in the last World Cup, and I know this guy. He can put in a shift defensively. For whatever reason or another, we weren't seeing it. Who knows what the reason was, but I am seeing it now. And what I noticed is that Granit Xhaka is now quicker, maybe not to make the interception, but to be able to get across to the player and make the tackle. He has a lot more urgency and a lot more, I'm not, maybe the word is enjoyment for that side of the game, because before it didn't even look like he enjoyed the defensive duties. But now he's getting stuck in. Now he is winning more tackles than I've seen him ever win before. And the Chelsea game, as an example of that, is that he was making interceptions, he was making a lot more tackles. And alongside of his defensive qualities that have improved, he's much, much, much better positionally. And position, position, positional awareness as a midfielder is crucial, because let's be real, there's a lot of slow midfielders out there, but they have the best positional awareness. They have great footballing knowledge. Someone like Pirlo wasn't very quick towards the end of his career, but he was always in the right position. So he never really looked out of the game. He never really looked he never really looked in the wrong position. His team never really looked defensively frail in the mids, because Pirlo always seemed to be at the right place, right time. I'm not saying Granit Xhaka is always at the right place, right time, but it's definitely improved his positions, not just defensively, but he finds himself in much better positions to be able to spread the play and to be able to essentially hold the ball more, because, as I've mentioned in previous videos, Torreira is always screening defense, but Granit Xhaka will often go from flank to flank to be able to offer that sort of medium for the ball to get played back to him, or perhaps just to get the ball and to perhaps play it across and switch the play, which we all know Granit Xhaka can do very well. And this is something that we never saw from him. There was times this season and last season where we'd get countered and he was walking back. You know, when we were at our worst this year, we were giving teams 50 to 60 free yards of space. The Palace game at home is the one that comes to mind, where there was times I think in their goal, the second goal, that when they countered us, they had 50 to 63 meters of space. And I know that's not entirely Granit Xhaka's fault, but he needs to take a lot of that responsibility considering he is a centre midfielder. He would be caught up front, he'd be walking back, and he just seemed to have no urgency whatsoever. And I don't know whether it's because he was low on confidence, he wasn't enjoying himself. No one will really know until we hear it from himself, but we are definitely seeing that a lot more now, as well as the leadership qualities that no one could really see that he had when he got appointed captain. I think there was a lot of people that weren't necessarily happy with that appointment, myself included, but a moment that's really come to really the one that stuck by me was one of the I can't remember who was against now. I just had it in my mind, but I think it was maybe Saka was going off in the game, and Xhaka went up to him and was geeing him up. He was, he high fived him and he was looking at him, being like, well done, fantastic, and it's those sort of things that when I'm watching, those are the sort of leadership qualities that we need, because a lot of our young players, and let's be real, a lot of our more senior players, maybe not the most senior, but our senior players, have never really had leaders in front of them. Let's be real. You telling me that Hector Bellerin, who's been in the side for a while now, although he's still a young player, you telling me he had leaders to follow? None of these leadership qualities has been a massive problem for Arsenal over the last few years. Not even last few years, over the last 10 years. That and defence, that has been a massive problem for us. And although I don't think Granit Xhaka should ever get the captain's arm back again, captain's armband, sorry, he does have leadership qualities. And I have noticed that in huddles and team talks, when he is talking, players do listen. And I mean, when you play centre mid and you get go down to 10 men and you get dropped back to centre back and you put a performance like that in, yeah, you may not be communicating verbally, leadership quality wise, but that is definitely leadership qualities in being able to step to that role, look calm and collected. I've noticed during the games he was sort of telling players to calm down, and that's incredible for me. That's a huge transformation because Granit Xhaka was a massive panic player, when he was sort of at the worst of his form, and to see him come to a position that he doesn't not very familiar with, and to look so calm and to essentially calm down the defense. And let's be real, to be able to calm down Mustafi is a massive, massive strength, because that guy wigs it more than anyone. He panics more than anyone. And for him to look for Mustafi to look so much better when Xhaka went to centre back is a credit of the leadership qualities and the trust that the players have around him. And yeah, I mean, it was incredible to see how much Granit Xhaka took to that role and was able to sort of, may not dictate the game, but sort of keep Arsenal in the game, and offer a lot for counters as well when he wanted to play the ball through as a centre back. You know, he is really starting to show a lot more qualities for me. And as I said before, he looks a lot better next to Lucas Torreira, but he looks a lot better next to Lucas Torreira because Lucas Torreira is very good at DM, but Xhaka is that midfielder that has that footballing intelligence. We're seeing it. He's played left back for Arsenal. He's played centre mid for Arsenal. He's played as a DM, although I don't think DM's his best position. He's played as a centre back, and I can't remember if he's played this for Arsenal, but he's played as a number 10 sort of role for Switzerland, which shows that if you're that sort of player that's able to slot into roles comfortably, you have very high footballing intelligence. And it sort of struck me today when I was thinking about doing this video that this is the reason why Wenger, Emery, and now Arteta have kept playing this guy, because everyone can see what sort of footballing knowledge he has and footballing intelligence that he has. And, alongside with some of his leadership qualities, which I didn't believe he had before, he becomes a valuable asset to the team. And just the way that he performed extremely well against United. He was not only was he holding the ball a lot more and sort of dictating the pace of the midfield, but he wasn't losing the ball and he was making a lot of tackles. When did you ever see Granit Xhaka run into open space before? When he got the ball, when did you ever see Granit Xhaka run into open space and look to drive it to the midfield and the defenders? You never saw it. I saw it multiple times since Arteta has come in this season. In the Man United game, I remember it. The Chelsea game, he was putting in a good shift. I think his weakest game that he's had in the last 9 to 10 games was probably the Palace game. That was it. But even that game, I thought he was very good in the first half. He just tended to slack off a little bit at times in the second half. As long as he maintains this focus that he has now, because that seemed to be his biggest issue before, I don't see why Granit Xhaka can't continue this form. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's a blessing in disguise that we didn't end up selling him to the Bundesliga, to whoever it was. I think it was Hertha Berlin or Werder Bremen. Didn't end up selling him. And yeah, if he keeps this performance up, I will be saying at the end of the season, let's not sell him, because apparently it still looks like he might go in January. Arteta has seemed to convince him otherwise, not go in January, to go in August instead of January. But let's see, let's see. I mean, let's not get carried away, but there has definitely been some sort of level of resurgence since Granit Xhaka has been in the lineup. Anyway, that is all I've got time for today, guys. Any feedback for this video will be much appreciated. Subscribe if you're new. I will be doing a transfer update video tomorrow, and I will be doing another video. Please keep your eyes peeled for that. This is APFC. Hopes everyone's had a wonderful day.